Well, hopefully you watched both of the videos that I had queued up for you so that you could see the immediate imitation in the first video and then the deferred imitation in the second video that illustrate how babies go from, very early copying that might actually have generated from the adult to very deliberate copying that happens in the second year of life. These are really important developmental stages. This is how baby humans learn to be human, is by imitating the other humans around them. They do a little bit of imitating animals. Right now my 3-year-old granddaughter is in a cat phase, and so she's been crawling around and meowing. And if you ask her to hand something to somebody, she puts it in her mouth and crawls it someplace. And you know what I'm talking about. So it's not always imitating humans. Sometimes they want to pretend and be something else. But this process of imitation is really quintessentially important for a small human to develop into a large human and know how to act like the other humans. So it's a really important phase. It's not something that we should pass by really easily, as we talk about it. Okay, social referencing. Now I'm going to let this run, and it's a silent video anyway, so don't worry, you're not missing anything by me talking over it. But what we're going to see in this video is a little toddler that's hearing a noise that they're not really familiar with yet, and they don't know exactly what to do. So the toddler is kind of attracted to the thing that's making the strange noise. But did you notice when they heard the strange noise, they sort of looked at mom to see, is this okay? And mom encouraged the toddler, yeah, it's okay. And then again, look, pointing over at the thing that's generating noise, mom's now acting scared about it. I don't know if you can see her facial expression, but she's sort of shying away physically from it. And the toddler again is like, well, but I hear that it's kind of interesting. I don't know if should I go over there. How mom reacts to the stimulus helps to determine how the toddler is going to react to the stimulus. So we call that social referencing. And toddlers do this with their moms really a lot, but it could be any caregiver that they spend a lot of time with. It's not just moms for sure, but the connection with mom oftentimes causes them to really rely on mom a lot. But the important thing is that they do it with lots of different kinds of stimuli. It's not just new noises, it's also new people. So let's say that you've got a 1-year-old who hasn't seen their uncle since they were 6 months old, which is not a long time in an adult's world, but that's, half your life when you're an infant. And so you haven't seen uncle in a really long time. And here comes uncle who's got a loud voice and is tall and comes in and is like, hey, come here, baby, who when you were 6 months old, more than happy to let me hold you again. Well, now you're a stranger to a 12-month-old. And so the 12-month-old is going to look at mom or dad or, normal caregiver and be like, is this person okay? I don't know. Should I be going over there? If the parent is acting very excited to see the new person and smiling and is happy to see the new person, that's going to make it more likely that the toddler will feel that way. It's not a guarantee. There are a lot of other factors we'll talk about in the social chapter, but that may make the toddler not really want to go to the new person still. But this imitation of sort of how the adult that I trust is acting informs how I'm going to act. That's part of basic learning. Let's see why that's not working. Okay. Okay. So now let's start to address Piaget's stages of cognitive development. We are going to talk about Piaget every cognitive chapter from now and through adolescence. So his model covers cognitive development, how people's way of thinking changes from birth to full physical maturity at adolescence. We're going to notice the shortcomings of that when we get there, but let's just go with that. So he says that children in the 0 to 2-year-old period are in what he calls the sensorimotor stage. He says this stage is really characterized by circular reactions. Circular reactions can be defined as repeated behaviors. It's like you got stuck in a loop and you have to keep, if you've ever done any computer programming, you can have a computer that gets stuck in a loop, keeps executing the same set of commands, stuff like that. So you get stuck in a loop kind of thing. So the first stage of the sensorimotor period, which sometimes I call, I think he calls it the sensorimotor period. And then there are these stages within the period, the sensorimotor period. I unfortunately use the word stage for both. So the circular reaction that occurs first is what's called the primary circular reaction. And this is where you're going to repeat, the infant is going to repeat a behavior that leads to pleasurable stimulation. So in stage 1, these are going to be reflexes. So this is the 0 to 1 month phase. So this is clearly going to be describing newborns. And you're going to find that newborns do a lot of things repeatedly. They suck repeatedly is the number one most common thing that they do, is that they suck rhythmically and repeatedly. They like get stuck in a sucking motion. They also get stuck in a crying motion. As I was preparing for the physical development chapter and looking for some videos that I wanted to include in the playlist, I came across some parenting ones. There's always parenting ones in these YouTube lists. And one of them was talking about how if you can recognize your baby's cues of hunger or pain or things before they get into a full cry, then it's a lot easier to initiate feeding if what's wrong with them is hunger. What they're talking about, and they didn't use this term, but what they were talking about is once the baby transitions into this reflexive cry, it's really hard to get them out of it because it's a circular reaction. The cry begets another cry, which begets another cry. And so they kind of can't stop, even if now finally here is the thing I was crying about. I'm finally getting fed, but now I'm so upset, I'm so busy in my reflexive crying that I can't kick over into my reflexive sucking. So this is really pronounced in the 0 to 1 month phase. It starts to wane with age, and that's good. You can have a baby who can cry because they're hungry and then still settle down and eat. In stage 2, which is going to be about ages 1 month to about 4 months, this is the period of what Piaget calls acquired adaptations. What he thinks happens here is that reflexes will start to transition into some behaviors that are chosen. So you may start to do some of your reflexive behaviors on purpose, like sucking when you want to eat, and not necessarily just getting stuck in a sucking motion to the point where I can't even get the pacifier out of the baby's mouth to put the bottle or the breast into the baby's mouth, right? Like you can actually choose to turn it on and off a little bit more once you're into the period of acquired adaptations. It's a little bit, it's not perfect. The next level would be the secondary circular reaction period. And now the behavior is being repeated because it elicits something interesting. So in stage 3, the characteristic is that the baby is trying to make interesting sights last. And this is really common among 4 to 8 month olds. I was reading a book on something completely unrelated to psychology. It was actually How to Think Like a Rocket Scientist. It was the book I was reading. And it used the example of peekaboo as something that is one of those, there's the reason why it's fun is because basically what's happening, even though you're a baby. But there's that little moment of jeopardy, like, will the face really reappear? So it's kind of fun because it's kind of nerve-wracking, but it's also basically predictable. And so babies love peekaboo, right? It's like, will the face reappear this time? Oh, good, it reappeared this time, right? And it's that kind of, secondary circular reaction, like, do it again. They'll laugh just as much the 3rd or 4th time that you've done it. And you're like, as an adult thinking, how is this fun for you? But it's fun because it's interesting. You're disappearing and you're reappearing as far as they're aware. In stage 4, the interesting aspect is that we start to see in babies new adaptations being applied. So they start to learn, take some of their previous behaviors and adapt them to suit new needs. And they also start to develop anticipation of what's likely to come next. So they start to, for example, recognize that dinner's being made, or they start to realize when you're cranking the jack-in-the-box that the clown's going to pop out at any moment. I found that horrifying when I was at least old enough to be conscious. Maybe I thought it was funny as a baby. I don't know. But for these 8 to 12 month olds, there's a lot of fun, interest to be had from anticipation and wondering whether it's really going to work out the way that I expect it to and things like that. In the tertiary circular reaction period, the behavior that's being emitted really is about maintaining understanding. So in stage 5, the 12 to 18 month old, Piaget called the little scientist because they move through the environment testing things out. If I drop my cup, what will happen? Oh, it hit the ground. Oh, and it made mom come over here. Let's see if that happens again. Drop my cup. It hit the ground, and there's mom again. Now she seems a little unhappy. Drop my cup, hits the ground. Now mom seems really unhappy. What's going on here? Oh, now I don't have my cup anymore. Mom said that's enough, right? Like they're literally trying that out to see what's going to happen. Will it keep happening the same way if I keep doing it the same way? Will it happen the same way if I change one thing? So they're like little researchers. And then the final stage of the sensorimotor period is the 18 to 24-month-old stage. And this is where they start to develop strategies through mental combinations. And this is when what I like to call the scary toddler stage, because they can walk, they can start piling things up, they can climb on them. I found my 20-month-old daughter standing on the handle of her little push cart thing, trying to reach on top of the 4-foot-high shelf that I had put up, trying to keep things out of her reach. I come upon her in this completely precarious, one wrong move and everything's going sideways kind of situation. I'm like, the scary toddler stage where they're in this strategy through mental combination. She was working it out that if only she could get high enough. And so she just kept stacking stuff up till she got high enough. And she could do a lot of that mentally, but a lot of it had to happen out in the real world, which is an important aspect of being an infant compared to an older child, is that a lot of it you have to do out in the world. So he has these 6 stages in the sensorimotor period, each of them tying to these different kinds of circular reactions. Now, I thought our textbook did a good job with this graphic, so I went ahead and grabbed it and put it in our slides here, where it shows you in the primary circular reaction, feels good, keep sucking, right? In the secondary, interesting object, keep shaking, right? In the tertiary, fascinating reaction, what else can I do, right? So if you can kind of think about it like that, this is a really great graphic that kind of shows you what it means to be primary, secondary, tertiary. I mean, someday if you're studying baby cognitive development in greater detail, you'll learn even more details about those 6 stages of the sensory motor state period. But I think for right now, if you could understand these 3 kinds of differences, you'll be golden for understanding Piaget's theory as it regards the infancy period. All right, let's go ahead and take a break here, and we will come back and talk about memory.